Hallo och välkommen. No, that's not right. Nah.
I,
Icelandic.
I,
There's two, can do it.
I'm sorry. Can you do that again for me?
Hallo och välkommen. Oh, that sounded good. Yeah.
Welcome, konnichiwa, aloha.
Welcome to the blank space, where we just fill it in with whatever we can think of.
We speak multiple languages here.
But
would
really
believe-
only one.
I,
And that's the language of human emotion.
I mean, that's because our 1.5 viewers speak English. So If-
Thank you, Dan.
if they spoke Latin, we would speak Latin. I don't actually. I'm gonna ask a very dumb question here. Can you speak Latin, or is that that's more written?
Yeah, you can speak Latin. You know,
Oh,
it's
wait.
the language of the Romans, and
Oh, that's what it was. Okay,
and
yes.
the Catholic Church, and you know.
As soon as I said that, I was like, oh yeah, because the church used to do that. I mean, they still do.
Hey,
but-
it's all good. It's all good. You have your moments. I have my moments, and you know, we let each other know how horrible we are.
Well, I mean, to transition from that, we figured out how horrible each other are at For Honor.
Yes. For Honor, that new game that came out in open beta over the weekend.
And is out, if not now, soon. I believe it's actually tomorrow or something like that. Like very.
Oh, I thought it was going to be out like the day. Wait, it's coming out on Valentine's Day.
Yeah, I mean, some people have to do stuff on Valentine's
that's
Day.
one way to express your love.
Yeah, no, no. I just checked. It is tomorrow for Valentine's Day. You can brutalize your enemies with swords, hammers, and axes in the name of love.
That's a lovely gift.
I mean,
What's the best gift you've ever given on Valentine's Day?
the gift of love.
Wow, that's kind of shit.
No, well, the one that jumps to mind is kind of a simple gift, but it was
Okay.
really, really well done. So, we're not sponsored by them at all, but
Okay.
there's a website and a store called Norman Loves Confections. And
All right.
they are based out in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. So,
So what can I expect from their selection?
very expensive chocolate. Surprisingly expensive.
So okay. So when you say like a specialty confection thing, right? Like this can go numerous ways already. All right. I'm just letting you know. Like you gotta be a little bit more specific of what you would entail with these gifts.
Well,
You know, for our listeners out there. You know.
so do you mean this gift or just gifts in general?
You know, I feel like we're just kind of going to talk about gifts for a little bit, and maybe circle back around this For Honor.
Okay, sounds good. I was going to say, the best gift I've ever gotten was For Honor from Anthony. He bought me the full game of For Honor. He actually bought a 4-pack for me and a bunch of other people, and then he bought himself one after that.
You assume things from me. Like I have money, and I appreciate that. I do. But no, I can't. I could not do that $240.
What? Come on. Listen. The best part about Valentine's Day is not the romance. It's
Okay.
the love you give.
That's fair. That's fair. In all fairness, I've never given a good Valentine's Day gift, so like
Oh.
that's okay.
I-
Like I was pretty like when I had a girlfriend, like she would be angry at me. Let's put it that way.
You'd show up with some Wendy's fries and like, yeah, check it out. Look what I got.
Yeah. I was never a big like Valentine's Day gift giver, so I suffered accordingly. I think one time I kind of was trying to think of like to give something like personal, and yeah, it didn't go well.
Well,
It was also a pretty shit gift too. So like it was like one of those like pine car derby things. Like that was.
wait, pine car derby, what?
But you never did those when you were a kid.
Wait, explain. I feel like I know what you're talking about. I just can't.
Okay.
I can't think
They're
of
like those little like little rectangle little cars that you make, right? and you carve them out, right? And yeah, and then you race them down a wooden track. You never did that?
I kind of did. I just don't know where the pine cone comes into this.
Pine cone? I said pine car.
Oh, that explains.
Yeah,
That
yeah.
explains.
So yeah, that didn't. It was not too appreciated.
Mm,
So
got him a little box, and you were just like, look, it races.
yeah. So yeah, that's what happened. So that was our obligatory Valentine's Day talk.
Yeah,
I'm single. You're single, and
that's
we're
why
both
he.
kind of shit at this whole thing.
Well, I mean, that's why he bought us For Honor, so we have something to do on Valentine's Day.
You sir, you sir. But anyway, how was For Honored anyway? How did you like it?
I thought it was super fun. Like it it sold me very well on the game as a whole, just by this like beta that I basically played for 2 nights. Yeah, something like two
Yeah,
nights of it.
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, so to give a little bit of idea of what the game actually is. Sorry about that. To give a little idea of what the game actually is, it's basically a medieval combat game between Vikings, samurai, and medieval knights. Where basically you go into an arena with all these different characters, more or less, and you just fight it out with swords, hammers, axes, all kinds of stuff. And
Yeah,
the
and it's kind of nice because like they have like 9 different classes, right? And all of them are relatively easy to pick up, but something that would definitely take a little bit to master, which makes it really cool.
Yeah, like I know,
It
I know the when I actually spent more time in the beta, it actually like dawned on me how complicated the movesets can be. Like for instance, the character I really stuck to was really big on counterattacking.
Mhm.
Like if the person attacked me and I dodged in the right way, I could actually get a free hit on them.
Yeah, yeah, completely. Or the one I was using was one that so there's a system where you can be in 2 different movements. You can be like in a block mode, which you're slower, right? And you can just kind of deflect different attacks, or you can just go charging in and just flail randomly at them. And that's what I would do with the one of the Vikings I would have. He would eat a mushroom, and he would and you could just get a huge speed boost and just charge in and hopefully get somebody.
Hmm. Yeah, and I mean, the I think every single person we played with played a different character, and they all
Mm-hmm.
had different strategies about how they would go about it. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and I mean, the thing that really stuck with me was the combat system itself. The combat system really is in depth, as opposed to a game I kind of compared it to sometimes called Chivalry. Now,
Yeah, I played a little bit of Chivalry, and I couldn't get past the tutorial because I could not figure out what was going on.
now here's the thing. I disagree somewhat because for me, Chivalry is a much simpler For Honor. Chivalry is basically a medieval combat game, but you play as basically knights, more or less, and you're given a whole bunch of different weapons, and it's very simple what you do. Basically, you're swinging or you're not swinging at someone. Um, it's a lot of fun. I don't want to put down either game. Both games are very fun, but fun for different reasons, more or less.
Okay, I can kind of see that, but like I also felt like I had no control over things because, well, I just couldn't. You couldn't use skill as much, I
Exactly,
guess.
exactly, and that's what.
I mean, like I'm still not good at this game, but like I feel like when I died, right? Like it was my fault I died every time. Like there's not a point where I'm like, oh man, that guy got a really cheap hit off me. It's like, no, I deserved that. I fucked up.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I was gonna say like that's the reason why I say they're both fun, but fun for different reasons. So Chivalry is fun because you basically jump into a brawl of like 10 dudes and just start smacking each other as much as you can, and someone ends
Mm-hmm.
up the victor. While For Honor, it's usually a 1v1 kind of thing. You're fighting one person, usually in best circumstances. I'll put it that
Mm-hmm.
way. But you're fighting one person, and it's very tactical how you fight. So when you're
Mm-hmm.
fighting, it really does feel like it's a game between just and you. Where Chivalry, it's just a mosh pit of like people hitting each other and everything.
Yeah, but you know what? For somebody like me, I find that not fun.
Right. And I can completely get on
Like,
board with that word. I can imagine someone not finding that fun and finding For Honor much, much better.
yeah, because like For Honor, again, like it feels like every bit of that gameplay feels like, it's me, like even if I suck at it, right? It's just me because I'm just not good at it yet, right? Like it's something I have to improve on, or something that I can work towards, or something along those lines. Where when I was playing Chivalry for the little bit I did, it just was just flailing, and couldn't really understand, like, what was I doing wrong, what was I not doing right.
Hmm.
To me, it just felt like I just sucked, and I didn't really know how to not suck. Where for Honor, it gives you a lot of feedback, right? Like you can see, if you're fighting somebody, right? There's a few directions you can try and block and attack, right?
Hmm.
And you can see where you failed to attack, where you failed to block, or how you attacked and where they defended, right? It gives you a lot of feedback,
It
like
has
what's going on.
it has an indicator of where they're attacking. Like they're attacking
Mm-hmm.
either up, left, or right. And
Mm-hmm.
if they're attacking a direction, it prompts you pretty easily about which direction they're attacking in. And also just generally how the person is like holding themselves and moving. You can kind of tell what they're setting up.
Mm-hmm.
So it really is a game of like figuring out the other opponent.
Mm-hmm. And you can also do like different move, like running away moves and like all that kind of stuff. It just feels like a more cohesive and just better experience overall for me. But that's just kind of my opinion on it, though.
Yeah, and I mean
But I look forward to it as soon as it goes on sale.
that's I mean this might just be like the poor college kid talking in me, but yeah, it pretty much is just like once this game goes on a good sale, it's in my pocket. I'm playing it, but I don't really I don't see it $60 immediately. But here is the thing: is that we only got to taste out like we only got a taste of the beta, which is just basically some of the multiplayer modes. And as
Hmm.
far as I know, there's going to be a full single player mode added to the game.
Oh, I
In
actually didn't know about that.
Yeah, it's going to have a full single player mode on the on the full release, and I think it's going to have more maps or something like that. Like they were doing a limited beta of what was actually in the game.
Oh,
Hmm.
oh, I did not real. I thought this was everything.
No, no, no. Like, what we played was very, very like like no, I don't want to say a small slice. It was certainly like a large amount of it, but it wasn't
Hmm.
like it wasn't the full package.
Gotcha, gotcha. Okay, all right. That makes me going from accepting $30 to $40. Okay,
Hmm.
all right.
Yeah, I mean, what's it called? The campaign actually sounds a little ridiculous. Basically, it 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 like brings a way to bring samurai, Vikings, and knights all together in the same world, and then pretty much kind of plays with that concept from what I understand about it. Now, mind you, this game is not out yet at the time of recording this, but the campaign sounds like it's having fun with its concept. It's not like it.
And in the DLC, we're gonna get pirates.
This is actually a hidden Deadliest Warrior game. That would actually be hilarious if this was actually just a secret Deadliest Warrior game like that's
Hmm.
going to come out. I
DLC adds like a new section. You get Spartans and then like whatever.
mm. did you
That'd be kind of fun.
did you ever play any of the Deadliest Warrior games?
No,
They
I
are
know they existed, but like didn't really touch any of them.
they are very dumb fun. See, there's a Chivalry DLC for it on PC, but I mean if that's like Chivalry, that's all right. There was actually a fighting game released for Deadliest Warrior. That
Okay,
game was very cheap.
all right.
So in For Honor, we kept coming across the issues where like a character would have a shield, but it wasn't able to block everything. Like someone
Hmm.
would come up with like a pole arm and just stab at them, and it was like, oh god, my shield's not doing anything. Deadliest Warrior, the fighting game, had the exact opposite problem. I remember I was playing it one time with a friend and picking the Spartan. And the Spartan, of course,
Okay.
has a giant shield to block everything in front of it, pretty much. And just nothing could hit me. Nothing he did could hit me. So pretty much it was 300. I would sit there with a shield in front of me, and he would just try poking me. Nothing would work, and then all of a sudden I just hit him with a sword, and he'd be down to half health.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Gotcha.
it was fun. I liked it.
Okay. Yeah, that does sound kind of fun.
It was dumb fun,
I
but
mean,
fun.
I mean, sometimes for me, right? Like, I just dumb fun is something that I don't enjoy, right?
Mm,
Like, at least when it comes to games. Like, when I'm playing a game, like, I like stuff that usually make like a ton of sense, unless like I'm going in there knowing, well, this is just trash, and we're just going to be in the heap and roll around in it, kind of deal,
yeah,
right? Like for that, I would be very disappointed if I paid $30 or something like that. But if like I got it on like a Steam sale for like $5, and a bunch of us were like, "Yo, let's go get some raviolis and beat the shit out of this,"
some
or whatever.
raviolis and beat the shit out of it. I'm sorry. Can you describe to me what a night of fun is to you?
I mean, what? You just don't get good food and good and trash games,
I,
and then just
usually when a night of gaming comes up, I don't go downstairs and say, "Boy, where's the Chef Boyardee? I gotta go. I gotta grab that," and then come back. There's gonna be a night of gaming right here, and I just sit there with my tin of ravioli, like, yeah, let's go to town. It's like, no. There's usually other snacks involved in my leisure time other than ravioli.
all right. Yeah, I may sit at my desk and play games and eat dinner sometimes. So
Oh,
you
okay.
know,
Eating dinner is a different thing. I thought you meant like you were like in like 1 in the morning on a deep Crusader Kings binge, and you were just like, "Oh God, I need something to eat." But
nah, I just
but
eat loaves of bread and feel like a starving peasant.
no, you're being thematic. Then you're being thematic. You're playing up
Very
to the
thematic.
character. You're sa-
Exactly.
you're saying my peasants in my country, I eat what they eat, and then you just start
Hmm.
eating a lot of bread.
See, you get it. I'm happy that you get it. You
I'm
make me smile sometimes.
I sometimes that's what I'm here
Hmm.
for.
Hey, keywords are key.
But overall, for Honor, I'm really happy with it. It's actually is a lot of fun. Here's one thing I wanted to ask though. You played it primarily on mouse and keyboard, and I played it on controller. Controller felt
Hmm.
super smooth and like responsive, and it felt natural. How about
Yeah.
keyboard and mouse?
So for keyboard or mouse, like the keyboard stuff felt really good,
Hmm.
right? The mouse stuff made me feel like my mouse is kind of crap. Like I'm not sure if it's either my skill level, or it's just the fact that my mouse just isn't so good. Because I have like one of those little Logitech things that costs like $20 and you pick up at Walmart.
Hmm.
So it's not as responsive as it really needs to be. But then again, this is probably the first game I've played ever that needs a mouse that responsive. So like you definitely do need a bit of a better mouse.
Playing your Crusader Kings, you don't exactly need pinpoint precision. You're just like,
Yeah,
okay, all right, I'll take my time. I'll click around a little
yeah.
bit.
For most strategy games, you don't really need something that needs to pick up on a mouse movement like instantly.
Hmm.
You know, but other than that, yeah, it felt pretty good. Like even though it was just like the mouse like mixing up, like I can tell like okay, it just wasn't me like getting the systems down yet. So yeah,
Hmm.
yeah, I'd recommend it on that. I probably would imagine it feels a lot nicer on keyboard though.
Yeah, I mean that's the
I
thing.
mean, not keyboard. On
Controller.
controller.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I was gonna say like I PC games are different depending what game you're playing. If you want to use a controller or mouse and keyboard, for the majority of my games, mouse and keyboard is perfectly fine. But there's like specific games that mouse and keyboard, I mean, controller works really well with. Something like a fighting game. A fighting game works really well on a controller rather than a mouse and keyboard. Even though it works
Hmm.
fine there, like there's a couple of games I've played before, like Skullgirls, that work really well on mouse and keyboard. A controller just feels more natural for that kind of game, and for Honor and games like Dark Souls, the third-person action games kind of have that feel that controllers work really well with.
Okay.
Like, it just, I guess, just the controls feel a little more natural with that. But
I got you. I got you.
I don't know. It varies from person to person. I mean, God knows, like, there's plenty of people who play through Dark Souls in a mouse and keyboard setup.
Yep. Then they are the leadest of men.
No, 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 no. Those are the people who play Dark Souls on, like, Guitar Hero controllers and microwaves. Wait, have you
Yeah,
actually
you're right.
have you actually seen this? Somebody is doing playthroughs of different
Yeah, I'm gonna
games.
hold up. I just want to say this right now, okay?
Okay.
There are things that you just look at sometimes, right? And you just see them, and you're like, no. All right.
Just no.
Okay. You're like, look, I understand what you're doing, and what you're doing is an amazing thing, but dear God, man, you're playing a video game on a microwave.
I see this is the hard stance that you stand on right here. Is microwaves are the line that you cross.
Well, I mean, come on, playing like a Guitar Hero controller or like something like that, like doing Dark Souls or something, like one of these like very tactile games, that just feels gross.
I see it as impressive myself, but I guess gross could be a word to describe it. So okay.
Honestly, the first thing I think of when I see that stuff is like, damn, how much time did that take to like? How much time did you waste just learning that? Like, I'm not making, I'm sort of making fun of them.
I was gonna say you're making fun of them. This isn't like, oh, don't get me wrong, I highly respect them. It's like, no, you're kind of crapping on their parade right now.
Oh, you know what? Straight up, I am. Yeah. You know what? I was gonna be a little on the fence on it, but like, just damn. Like, I just think of it like, how much time do you need just to be good at that? And it just makes me cringe a little bit.
All right, let's find out where this line is for you. Let's find out where this
Okay.
line is, because I feel like the line is in a gray area right now. Okay, so mouse and keyboard and controller for games. Fine.
Yeah.
Okay. What happens if you're playing like a, let's say, like a platformer on a DDR pad?
I can see that being fun.
Okay.
That kind of seems a little fun.
Okay.
I'd never do it, but
All right. What if you're playing like a rhythm game on a DDR pad, like a Guitar Hero game?
I mean, that seems wrong, but like that's not bad, I guess.
Are we talking like you're gonna take up a torch and pitchfork and run towards them, or?
No, it's more like I'm gonna give him like a sideways look and be like, "Yo, what you doing, buddy?" Just like, "What you doing?"
Okay, all right. So let's move on to the next point, the next step of the football field, the next line.
All right.
So what happens if somebody's playing Overwatch with a potato?
All right, Drew.
Mm-hmm.
First of all, they are #1 Russian, and
No, Irish.
salute
Irish.
them.
They're using the potato. They had a famine for a long while, and they're sitting now like, yes, the potato is sacred. We must use it.
well, fine then. They're not Russian. They're a leprechaun sitting on a Blarney Stone, and they're playing with a potato. Yeah, the #1 Irish guy. You happy now,
Yes.
Drew?
Yes.
You happy?
So please continue.
No, that's all I had.
So no. I was asking if you were okay with potato Overwatch.
No. What do you? I mean,
you're
you can eat the potato. You're committing sacrilege against the potato.
See, I don't think.
I mean,
this is where we don't
like
see
what's
eye
the
to eye.
controller? Like, do you press the eyes of the potato? Is that what the controls are? Do you jiggle them around to move?
Well, like I imagine,
how does this work?
I imagine cutting it in half uses your alt, since that's not very often. Maybe massaging the potato in certain places makes
I mean,
it so
you can't
can
see
fire.
this, but like I'm rubbing my head because I feel like I got a migraine now.
I think this is going to be your homework. Your weekly homework assignment is going to be. I'm going to send you a video of a guy playing Overwatch on a potato, and you're just going to try and figure out how it works.
Nah, I got better things to do.
All right then. Well,
Like talk about your topics
well.
that you have.
And any final thoughts on For Honor? Anything else you wanted to mention about it?
No, it just looks good. Do it.
Yeah.
And we're not sponsored by For Glory or whatever it is.
For glowing endorsement. Yeah. Go play that Empire that For Empire game. That one. You know, Age of Empires. That one. Age of Empires 2 on Steam right now for $15. Is it? I don't remember how much it is.
It probably is actually with all the expansions they made for it. But that's besides the point.
No. I feel like you have something to say about Age of Empires 2. The ancient game at this point.
I'm just saying it's a pretty good game.
Okay, I'll trust you. I've never played it, but I'll trust you.
I mean, honestly, I'm actually going to be really honest with you right now. I went back to it, and I can't do it. Like, I thought I could, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, oh, cool, they revamped it and stuff like that. Right, cool. I'll go back to this, and this interface is just old.
Yeah.
This feels ancient. I couldn't do this again. No.
See, that's the funny thing to me is I've done that before. I've gone back to older games and.
And the answer is $20.
Okay, that's doable. I mean, if you're really into the game, why not?
Mm-hmm. Or there's a Steam sale.
Yes, but yeah, no. So yeah, here's the thing. Like, there's plenty of games I've come across where I've gone back to it and just said to myself, like, I just can't play this. The UI or the feel of the game just doesn't feel right.
Mm-hmm. That's for sure.
Yeah, like
it feels like like you can't feel smooth with it anymore. Like there was a point where you could be like, oh, stuff was just awesome. Like if this was like whenever it got released, how many years ago, it would be like the best thing in the world. But you know, Age of Empires 3 happened, and besides of what other people think, you know, I think that's a great game. And
oh man, throwing out the controversial opinion.
yeah.
I have no idea if that is actually a controversial opinion or not.
It's a mixed opinion. Like a lot of people didn't like how like Age of Empires 3 looked or worked or anything like that. I personally think it was a great step forward, but there is no Age of Empires 4, so
and it doesn't look like there ever will be, as far as I can tell, because they'll just keep making expansions to 2 apparently.
Yeah.
But
I think that should actually tell you a lot. What do you think?
That was the weird thing to me, was that they just started releasing expansions to games that are ancient in like 2016 and 2017, and I don't quite know how to feel about it.
It's like a sequel, except, you know, not.
Like that was the example I was going to use, was that the game that I tried to go back and play was Baldur's Gate. Now that game I always had a big interest in because I'm a big fan of Diablo 2. I'm a big fan of the Diablo series in general. But with Diablo I always like, oh, this is really cool, but if it was just a little bit more, if it was a bit more like an RPG and a little less like a dungeon crawler, that'd be amazing. And I've always heard that like Baldur's Gate kind of fills that role. Well, lo and behold, I go into it one day. I buy the like enhanced edition on Steam. I pick it up and I start playing it. And that game just feels so ancient. It just feels so ancient to play.
Yeah, like the whole isometric look is just something that's... It just doesn't feel good. It really doesn't. Like, it's something I can't enjoy. Like, the one... What is it? Paradox just released it with Obsidian.
The bad guy one?
What's it... Yeah, Tyranny. Right? Like, it looks good and all, right? But just the whole look to it just really turns me off.
See, I don't mind isometric games. I don't even mind games that look really terrible. Like, it to me... a game look and how it does that is not bad. Like I can go back and still play Diablo 1 because Diablo 1 feels really janky, but you can make it work. It can kind of feel all right.
Mm-hmm.
But there's certain games that you just jump into and you're just like, this is going to take a big learning curve to kind of get over, to kind of learn how to play.
Yeah, you know what? I don't think I'm always okay with those type of games. Like, I feel like I can do that for strategy games, but like when it comes to like narrative driven, like RPGs and stuff like that, like I don't know what it is. Like, I can do Skyrim, right? I can do Oblivion, but and I can do like the Fallout games, but like when it comes like to like the real hardcore ones, it just seems like just so much time.
Yeah,
I feel like those games don't really respect your time, or they expect you just to be in there forever.
sometimes. I mean, it's a difference of like 10, 15, 20 years, however old the game is. It definitely brings up like that back then game design was in its earlier stages than now. Like right now we understand how to make a game feel good to play. Well, back then they were still playing around with that, more interested in telling a story or making mechanics or something like that. And
Well, I was
sometimes,
just saying, just like the whole feel in general.
yeah, and that's what I'm saying is that the
I mean, for like even like more modern games and such.
oh
Like it's just straight up not my interest kind of deal.
oh what do you mean?
Like like I can get into a story a little bit, right?
Hmm.
But like if it just if things just don't like connect in the right way, it's something like I can't get deep into. Kind of like ooh, what's a good example? What's a good example? Um oh, Darkest Dungeon, right? Like that's a game that feels really cool at first, right? But like it just takes so much to get really good at it and like to really understand what's going on. It just kind of turns me off to it.
Hmm.
Like I guess the difficulty curve just goes up too fast, too quick, kind of deal.
I could maybe.
Or maybe I'm just bad at games. I mean, that's a possibility too.
Yeah, I mean, you're terrible at games. You're awful. You're the worst. But
10 out of 6.
I mean, that means you're very good. But we'll ignore that for a moment. The
I mean, 10 out of 6 quality of being bad.
that's
So that
still
means I'm
almost
extra bad.
that's still almost 150%.
That's 150% at being bad.
Oh,
Do you see what I'm saying now? You picking up what I'm putting down?
so you're like a negative 10 out of 6.
Yeah.
Okay, I gotcha. I'm picking up what you're throwing down.
It's in your hands.
Just don't throw down anything heavy. I can't pick that up.
All right. That was a little heavy. I'm sorry.
But I get what you're saying. Where like certain games like if they don't do a great job teaching you their mechanics, or if they try and push too much on you at once, or even if just the difficulty is a little off, it's certainly hard to actually
Yeah, like
adjust.
like games that you don't really understand. Like, well, why am I doing bad at this, right? Whereas, you know what? Games like Witcher, I love because you always know like there's like something deeper going on, right? But you can always just try and skill your way out of it, or you can try and like level cap yourself above it, or you can try and doing the smarter route, right? Like there's going to be a smarter way to approach something every time. Like there's always something you can try and do to make the situation better, kind of deal, right? Well, I'm saying combat wise. Whereas things like Darkest Dungeon, I would just like get into a point where I'm just murdered and I didn't really understand why I was murdered. I thought like something along those lines. Or like again, like For Honor, right? Like how that's very responsive. Like, look, how are you bad? It pretty much tells you how you're doing bad as long as you're paying attention.
Yeah,
Right.
it's two fronts with For Honor. Where one, it says like, okay, this is what the other person was doing, and then the other end is what could you have done with your character to avoid that? And a lot of the time, it comes down to just knowing the class that you're playing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah. And that's something I kind of like, I guess. And when it's like when it's too hidden under the HUD of like what you have to do to try and get better, it kind of really turns things off for me, I guess. And that's what
I was gonna say I can get behind that. Or
Like, I'm willing to like put time into a game. Like, if it's willing to be like, hey, here's what's going on. But like, if it's not, if it's like, hey, just figure out everything on your own. I mean, that feels like work. You
yeah,
know what I mean?
we'll take a game that I really like that I think does this really poorly. Um, so I really like the Monster Hunter games. I think they're
Okay.
really, really fun games. They're essentially just boss battle after boss battle after boss battle. That's all you're fighting. Is every single monster
Okay.
you fight is tough to beat, and then on top of that, it feels like a boss battle where it just takes time to whittle them down and beat them down and all that. Now, the problem I've always had with Monster Hunter is that it's it's really hard to figure out what you need to get better gear or better weapons without referring to an outside source, like a fan wiki or some kind of a resource outside of the game. Because the game will never tell you where you can get Dragonite ore or
Mm-hmm.
any of this stuff. You just have to look it up on online, and it says, oh, if you go to this area on this difficulty and mine, you'll have a certain percent chance to get it here. If you didn't
Mm-hmm.
have that, the game would never tell you, and you'd never know.
Oh,
So
there wouldn't be like some dialogue you can try and find or
no,
nothing like
no,
that.
no, no. It
Oh.
would never tell you. You just have to literally go around to every area to figure out where it is. Now, sometimes there's little hints in like the dialogue for some of the early game items, but later on it gets really difficult to do that. And I get
Okay.
entirely what you mean when you say like, well, if the game isn't explaining it properly, or even if it's just hard to actually grasp like the concept of it,
Mm-hmm.
having the game teach you is important rather than trying to learn from an outside source. Because going,
Like I'm definitely okay with like there being like a depth in there that like is like above me and all.
yeah,
Like there's straight up. I know I'm not the best person when it comes to those type of games, but just having it there and accessible, if I can put the time into it, is something that I feel is kind of necessary. Even if personally I'll not use it, just knowing that I just have to put in like a bit of more effort to get there allows things to just feel more approachable. Like I'm not just going into this game that's just completely untouchable kind of deal.
yeah, exactly. Because I mean, with the problem of not teaching the player certain mechanics comes in that when you want the player to use those mechanics, they just don't know them. They just
Mm-hmm.
don't know them, and they can't know them because you put up an artificial wall in front of them saying, "Oh, you need to know this thing for you to do well in this fight, or for you to just do better at the game." And
Mm-hmm.
if the game hides that away, that is certainly a detriment. But here's the thing. I'll take the opposite angle as well on this argument. Some games do it well, and that's sometimes the game's appeal is
Okay.
not knowing what you're getting into.
Mm-hmm.
So, for instance, a game I really like is The Binding of Isaac.
Okay.
Have you ever played that?
Yeah, actually, I think Binding of Isaac though is that's not a problem though.
Why? Well, why do you think that?
Well, it's because like first of all, the game sells itself on that it's supposed to be random each time. Like the Gungeon and like the Binding of the Isaac are games where like hey, this is what you're getting into. This is what you're signing up for, right?
Hmm.
And they're not they're games that aren't super long, right? It's not like something where like you do something like your first 10 minutes, right? And then like 12 hours down the line you're like, "No, you fucked up bad." Right? And it was something you couldn't have known in your first 10 minutes kind of deal. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Where like those games, right? They're like if you mess up or if you do bad, you what? How long is a usual playthrough of like Binding of Isaac, right? Like
Like 5 to 15 minutes, maybe 20 if you're really, really pushing hard.
yeah, like it's not that long. Like it's not a game that's going to be like 10 hours long or 20 hours long or 30 hours long. Like it's meant to be like that.
Yeah.
Like the Gungeon and like those other like roguelike kind of
For
games.
example, to compare to, I mean, it's a really poor metaphor. It's a really poor comparison because they're completely different games. But with Binding of Isaac, if you pick up an item that does a really poor job with the build you have, or just randomly messes with you, or does something wrong, and
Mm-hmm.
kills you, that's relatively quick. Like, you pick it up and all of a sudden you have 1 heart. You can take 1 more hit of damage, but all of a sudden you're super
Yeah,
powerful.
yeah, you're
You
right.
die you die pretty much immediately. It's like, oh, that sucks, but you can jump right back into it.
There definitely are cheap things like that,
Yeah.
and
Well, the
it's
example I was going to use was that on the opposite end of Monster Hunter, if you're jumping into a fight with a new monster and you know nothing
mm-hmm.
about this monster, you basically prep before that fight to do the fight. So you take potions, you grab certain items. Let's say that monster does poison damage,
Mm-hmm.
and you didn't know that jumping into it. Well, now you're in that fight for however long you're going to be in that fight without any antidotes. So all of a sudden you get poisoned. You're like, oh god, no, I need to do this, and you don't want to quit because you've already sunk so much time into this mission doing everything else. So once you get poisoned, you're like, well, maybe I can kill it, and then you die, and it's like, oh god, all right, well, maybe you quit then, or maybe you keep going. But it's despairing to have that happen because over time you're just like, oh, why didn't the game just let me know anything about this? If I'm
Mm-hmm.
gonna sink so much time into doing this, why can't the game give me some indication of it? Where,
I got you.
whereas Binding of
And
Isaac,
without
where Binding of Isaac is just like, you learned the item now. Okay, go back. You'll be back to where you were in maybe 5 minutes with no gains or losses.
mm-hmm.
Maybe you'll come back
Yeah,
better.
I got you.
Exactly.
Like, I definitely I'm less of a fan of that kind of stuff. Like even in the Binding of Isaac, it gets a little tiring for me, or like the Gungeon. I but the core gameplay is basically meant you're supposed to run back through it, kind of deal.
Yeah.
You're supposed to eventually build up. But granted, the Gungeon, for instance, it does take a lot to build yourself back up sometimes, though. So that can kind of make it a little tiring to play.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Like, I would compare it to Isaac better than anything else because Isaac really does feel short. It feels like, man, I've been playing
Mm-hmm.
this for 5 minutes. All right, I died. Whatever. Okay, jump back in. Where other games that have this problem, uh, basically put a magnifying glass on top of it. They say like,
Mm-hmm.
okay, you're really gonna notice this because we're gonna be here a while.
Mm-hmm.
We're gonna be here a while, and you need to learn how this works.
Yeah. Like, you know what's an interesting game that did it kind of a little weirdly? It was the Fable games.
Hmm.
Well, I think it was like the second one that you had that choice of sacrificing portions of the town. Which one was that? Was that the second one or the third one?
I've never played a Fable game.
Oh shoot, I'm in here alone. Gotcha. All right.
You're driving.
So
Here's the wheel.
All right, so I forget which one it was, but I like the Fable series in general just because it's a more streamlined RPG experience. I mean, like it's not as in depth as I would like it to be, but things are pretty simplified, right? I like going through a story and going to A to B kind of deal, right? That's kind of how I like my RPGs. I'm not somebody that really enjoys like super in depth quest lines and all that kind of stuff. I kind of like a story being told and just kind of me going through it. And I feel like Fable allows you like a little bit of autonomy in picking your own story, but it pretty much has things pretty nicely laid out as well with like side quest lines, little things you can do on the side, all that kind of stuff. But it had a part, I forget which one it was, the second or the third one, that you had you wouldn't have known this beforehand, but depending on how much money you had racked up during the game, you could either keep a section of the world safe, or you can destroy it to get money for the kingdom to be saved. Right? But it didn't really let you know beforehand that you would need to get piles and piles, and I mean millions, basically, of money, right? Like you would have to have saved up for a long time just to get this money, kind of deal.
Yeah, that definitely rubs me the wrong way of being like, well, there's an entire ending of the game, or at least like a benefit to the game that you're just
Hmm.
missing out on because the game was like, oops, guess you
I
should have
mean, like,
known.
yeah, like when I played through it, I had luckily saved up enough where I only had to basically have like one section of the town destroyed, right? And like pretty much everything was going to be safe, but I didn't get the best ending possible, right? But it definitely felt a little cheap to it because weren't really too forewarned about like how important this was going to be,
Hmm.
right? Like how much cash you were really going to need, kind of deal.
Yeah. And how is the ending if you don't get enough money?
Certain main characters may die.
I mean, how does it feel ending wise? Does it feel complete?
I
Does it still
mean,
feel like an ending, or does it feel like, oh
oh
man, you
no,
really should?
definitely does still feel like an ending to it. Like it's the choices you've made, right? But like for instance, right, for me, after I had done that, right,
Mhm.
you could actually have friends. I forget if it was the second or third one. It's been such a long time. But I had one of my friends come in because it had like a little bit of multiplayer where you can come on in with each other's worlds and just kind of mess around a little bit, right?
Mm.
And he had heard about this beforehand because he had read a guide, right?
Mhm.
And he had saved everything in power game things and gotten saved up so much money so he had the perfect ending because he had looked at a guide beforehand. And for me, I had not looked at anything beforehand, and it just kind of felt kind of cheap, I guess. I don't know. I don't really know a good way to put it, to be honest.
Hmm.
Like him looking at the guide gave him such a better outcome,
The game,
or just like having the knowledge that you had to save up money. Just the money thing alone.
yeah,
Like there wasn't like a certain amount of skill you could do, or like you couldn't skill your way out of that.
yeah, the game rewarded him for metagaming pretty much, saying like, oh, I'll just look at how it's supposed to end, as opposed to you
Mm-hmm.
where you were just putting in the effort to do it.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, that always that's a hard one because sometimes I like that, sometimes I don't.
Because like, how do you really even like get prep for that? I mean, like as a game designer, like how do you make that fair?
Well, I'll give you an example of something I like a game I like a lot that did that I don't think all games can do well.
Okay.
So, I'm a big fan of the Dark Souls games.
Mm-hmm.
I like them all. They're all super interesting to me how they are designed and how they play and everything. And Dark Souls 1 does that exact thing that you were talking about, but I think it does it really well.
Okay.
So, throughout the entire game, you're being led um, by these characters that basically say like, "Oh, you're the hero who's going to save this land." Like basically, you start out the game and they say, "Hey, you look hero-like. Go ring those two bells. If you ring those bells, you'll definitely be the hero." And you're like, "Okay, I'll do it." So you go ring the bells, and then after you ring the bells, this serpent comes out of the ground, and he says, "Oh, you are the chosen one. You're the one who's going to be saving this land. You're going to be defeating Gwyn and relighting the flame to save the world from the darkness." And you're like,
Mm-hmm.
cool, alright, I like being heroic. And then you play through the rest of the game, defeating more bosses and saving up the souls, and eventually fighting Gwyn and defeating him, and relighting the flame of this world, which is keeping out the demons and darkness and all the evil of the world, basically.
Okay.
But that is not the true ending.
What's the true ending?
So the true ending of the game is really you can only get it if you know where things are. If you either stumble across them somehow, or you find online like generally where these things are. So more or less, what you find out is if you go to a certain place at a certain time, there's another serpent who basically tells you you're being played as a fool. You're being played
Okay.
as a fool, and you lighting this flame is only putting a band-aid on the problem, as opposed to letting the flame die out and darkness taking back over. But darkness isn't exactly
Bad.
it. Well, it's bad in the sense that it'll kill humans, but it's inevitable. The story is really complicated for Dark Souls. I'll go into the exact story at a different time, but more or less, the story it goes in with is basically there are two endings to the first game, and the ending everyone gets is the heroic ending, where you're the hero of the land. But the other ending of it tells you more information as to why this won't work, or why you're being played as a fool for it,
Okay.
and you work for it. And that's why I think it works for the game, is because it makes you really go out of your way and experience the game in a completely different way to get this ending, as opposed to what I imagine Fable does, which is Fable is like, okay, how much money you got at the end of the game? All right, you
Yeah.
got a thumbs down. All right, you gotta take the bad ending. It's like instead of that, where it's technically working towards it, but it's more just an annoyance of like, oh, I didn't have enough money. Oh well, that kind of sucks. Where Dark Souls, it's like, if you want the other ending, you really need to work at it.
Yep. That sounds about right.
Hmm.
Yeah,
I'm
that's actually pretty much how it was.
I'm glad we've come to a conclusion of For Honor.
Yeah, you did a good job there.
No, but I think it's interesting. I mean, I'm super interested in game design and how games run and everything like that. So, if you're
Hmm.
interested in that, don't worry, you'll have plenty of that on the podcast.
Yay! I get
Woo.
to learn and educate
Edu-
myself.
education.
Wow.
So, I would like to push this over to another topic that I'd like to talk about. And that is
Yes.
For
Yes,
Honor.
you
For
would.
Honor was great. I mean, no, I'm putting it off because it's time to talk about my favorite topic.
You
Somewhat
mean the worst
politics.
topic?
Somewhat politics.
Yes, somewhat politics.
Well, I say somewhat politics because the thing I'm talking about are news shows, but
Okay.
specifically comedy news shows.
You mean stuff like the Colbert
Colbert
and
Report,
like
Daily Show, Last Week Tonight, that kind of thing.
okay.
So, what's your experience with those shows? Like, have you watched a good bit of them?
I mean, I watched the Colbert Report when it was out, and I like John Oliver, and yeah.
All right. So, the two things I want to talk about.
Mm-hmm.
One, the perception of these shows, and two, the the how much
Mm-hmm.
credit you should put into them.
Oh, okay. I got you. So basically, how much should you trust your sources?
Kind of, yeah, kind of. I'll explain it more when we get to the second point. But the first point is, what do you think is the general impression of people who watch these shows?
It's gospel, pretty much.
All right, why do you think
It's
that?
like, because they kind of take things at a more light-hearted tone, and let's see what else. I feel like it's a lighthearted tone, and they feel like people, like somebody you would have, you'd go out with a beer with. I guess is a good way to put it. You know what I mean?
Hmm. Yeah, they humanize it. They bring it down a little
Yeah.
bit to. They turned it into comedy, which comedy is always easier to understand when making fun of something.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the thing I've never understood is why people discount these shows as, oh, they're not real news, or you get your news from them. Like, really? It's like, well,
Mm-hmm.
to me, those shows do a great job of telling you the news through a lens of comedy, so you can more easily digest it, as opposed to the regular news, which usually, I don't know, usually
It
gets
it just kind of feels stale.
it feels stale, but also it feels like they're not spending any time on it. So the
Mm-hmm.
thing I always pull away from it is that comedy is all about timing. Comedy is all about how you say your words to people, the content of it, and how
Okay,
you say the words. So you could be funny, but if your timing is off, no one will ever laugh.
I got you.
And
So it feels like these comedy shows, though they do a lot of their stuff in jest, they put more time behind them, so they feel better.
yeah,
That the shows feel more interesting, right?
exactly. And that's the point I was going to get at was that because they spend more time telling you about these certain topics, they kind of have to because to tell the jokes that they want to, they need you to understand the topic. They need to set up everything. And with
Mm-hmm.
more time comes more clarification and comes more of everything. On top of just
Mm-hmm.
being well sourced in general. See, that's the thing. That's the second point as well. Is that I never understood people who say like, oh, these shows like you have to watch real news or you have to read other sources or something like that or anything like that. Just it never fully understood it because they do a decent job trying to get it right most of the
Mm-hmm.
time. I won't say all the time because obviously they're not right 100% of the time. But it feels like they're discounted because they're telling it funny as opposed to the news networks, which are just telling it straight and serious, but don't spend
Mm-hmm.
any time with it. How do you think? I keep going on, but how do you think
You
about
know what?
this?
I kind of feel like that. I feel like that feels a little bit true because how seriously somebody takes something can be how willing somebody else is to take it seriously, kind of deal.
Hmm.
Because like if you do put that joke aspect to it, then people like those are that are more serious minded tend to care a little bit less about what they're saying, right? At least those that are feel like there's definitely people out there that feel like the news when it's the news has to be treated in a sort of sacred fashion. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
Right? And treating it anything as anything else means you're not a serious source. Like there's definitely people out there that feel like if you can't say it with like just straight laced completely, then you probably don't know enough about it kind of deal. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, like if you're making jokes about it, you're not fully grasping the gravity of the situation, or worse, you're
Mm-hmm.
not you're lying about it.
Or you're just playing it up for laughs or, something like that.
Yeah, I mean, for me, comedy has always been a decent way of conveying really difficult ideas to people. Like when 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 really really terrible like world events happen, the usual sign that I get when things are starting to get a little better is when people start to poke fun a little bit, when they start to joke about it a tiny bit. And
Okay.
that's when you can start to get people's minds around it a little better because obviously when terrible things happen, people have a hard time grasping it. Like I'm talking about a
Okay.
world sense, not a personal sense. Like a world
I
sense,
got you. I got
when
you.
when things happen in the world, comedy is the diffuser for everything. Comedy is what brings people
It's
together
like
for it.
once you're able to make fun of it, it's become less serious and, things aren't as bad or maybe comedy does that to things.
I, w- I
It
wouldn't
makes
I wouldn't say as bad. I would just simply say it's on a more level playing ground than everything else. It's on common ground for everyone because everyone's laughing and get the joke for it.
okay.
Whether you agree with the joke or not, that's a different story. But obviously, when you're when when you joke about it, people get the point of view you're coming from, and most of the time it's played in a way that people can agree with.
Okay. Yeah, I can kind of see what you're meaning there.
Yeah, like for instance, last night, John Oliver came back for his show Last Week Tonight on HBO, and he
Mhm.
basically talked entirely about. He's been off the air for a couple of months, and you can imagine coming back to the middle of the Trump presidency, he had quite a bit to say. But it never felt like he was just hammering home how bad this is singularly. It never felt like he was going at it simply just saying, this is bad. He was saying, this is bad, but understand why it's bad and laugh at it on top of everything else.
It's essentially trying to make things okay, I guess, right?
I guess, yeah, in a way. In a way, that makes sense. Just
Like making it more like bite size and understandable for those that maybe just be freaking out about things, kind of deal.
yeah, that, and also just the fact of like trying to uh, no better word for it other than unexhaust people of the topic, because at this point people are just exhausted
Yeah,
of
that you know
hearing
what
of
that
everything.
that makes a lot of sense. Just because like taking the seriousness away from it allows people to be like, all right, I get it. It's sort of funny, kind of deal. Instead of just being like, I'm just sick of this, kind of deal.
Yeah, because it you get desensitized to it after a little while. You get
hmm
desensitized to it where basically you over time just hear it over and over again. You're just like, okay, I get it. It sucks, I get it.
Now, on another note, I would want to go back to just comedy news in general. Like I really don't know anybody in my age range that has ever said that comedy news isn't real news. You know? Like I feel like that it is a very ageist thing, right? Like do you have you ever met somebody from like, in the under 25 bracket or the under 30 bracket that's like comedy news isn't real news?
Somewhat. I've met them before, but the problem is usually those people are trying to defend their own point. Like
Okay.
the people who made fun of their point, so they're like, oh, I mean, these people can't be correct. Like they're just telling jokes on Comedy Central. Why would that ever be correct?
Okay.
And I I don't know if it's specifically a age thing. Also because I figure that kind of mindset is not a age thing. Um, that is not a oh we're 20 somethings so we're more flexible to it, or we're 50 somethings we know but more than everyone else. It's more just
Well, I just mean like I feel like comedy itself has changed in general because I mean what like 20 years ago it wasn't your comedian that was breaking news to you,
yeah,
right?
absolutely.
Like it was the news networks that were doing it. You don't find out about like what is it? Like these big bills that are against like internet security you find out from your comedians or like, stuff like that.
Yeah, people are putting a funnier spin on it rather than just
Like I
saying
feel
this is
like these news comedians are a new brand. Like this is something that is new
hmm,
in general. At least I feel like it is. I could be wrong. We're probably going to get somebody that's like 40. It's like no, this has been around before, but um I don't really see like a I get I'm kind of losing my train of thought here.
no, I get what you're saying, where it's a relatively new thing. Like this is
Mhm.
not, as far as I know, this has not been around. This has not been the norm. This has not been
Yeah,
something that's
yeah.
always happened.
That's the main point.
So, this being something new, obviously people are maybe a little bit hesitant to it. But at this point, it's been around long enough. Like, um, parody comedy news shows have been around since like the 90s, probably, maybe
Well,
like
yeah, The
80s as
Onion was a
well.
newspaper at one point, so
What was?
The
Oh,
Onion
hmm.
is like the Paramount
Yeah, exactly. And
kind of
that's been
deal.
around for a long while now. But I figure it's just interesting to see comedy news shows and the standards they're being held up to rather than the typical news networks.
Yeah, you're right. It does feel like just because the thing they cover is like so much more directed, it definitely feels that they care about the subject a lot more. Whereas like just a regular news story is just going to be like one or well, no, it's not going to be one. It's going to be many, many things going over in like quick succession kind of deal.
Yeah, and I mean that's the thing that bothers me so much is every once in a while I'll sit down and watch the news and just it feels like there's so little time given to any topic that they can't talk about it
Mm-hmm.
at length at all. And mind you, most of
Well,
these news shows that I'm talking about, Colbert Report, Daily Show, and
mm-hmm.
Last Week Tonight, are not long shows.
Mm-hmm.
They range from half an hour to an hour, depending. But
Mm-hmm.
when you break it down, it feels like they're more concentrated on it rather than the news,
Mm-hmm.
which is giving you broad strokes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah. I definitely see that as well.
Hmm. So why do you think it came to be that way? Why do you think instead of the people who went into to do the Daily Show or to do the Colbert Report didn't just try to go for CNN, Fox, ABC News, all that stuff? Why did
I
they go
feel
there?
like it's a structure thing because all those other news programs are set up like in a certain structure. Like you put on your local news station just so like you can get like, hey, what's going around in my area,
Mhm.
and there is just so much to go over, right?
Yeah.
Like the only time you ever get like a really dedicated like section is like maybe World News Tonight, right? And like that's the only time, or like you get a special, right? Like and they'll go over something, right? That's the only time you'll get something that's really like gone over and it looks like they did a lot of research behind it and like they really care about this topic, right? Otherwise it's just stuff like, hey, we got to get through just so many things that are going on around in your area.
Yeah.
Like everything from like, the shootings may happen, or like, a little local fair thing, or there's just so much to go over, and that if they gave any any serious amount of time to it, they would be better off just like doing a standalone special,
Hmm.
which only certain broadcasters get anyway, and so it's not really like they have a choice to do so like in regular news, because there is just so much to go over. I mean, like a lot of these news stations work with the whole tri-state area,
Yeah, and I mean
right? South Jersey, like ours is just like South Jersey, Philadelphia, and like a little bit of Delaware. Like that's what ours goes over, like everything in that little area, and that's a lot.
yeah, and I mean, this will briefly touch on my thoughts on the 24-hour news network, but you think with all that time, they'd have enough time to start to go over things in any depth, but it
But
really
but
always
the thing
feels
is,
like, hmm?
but the thing is though, is that they need that to be viewed by everybody, right?
Yeah,
Like that what they give out at like 7 o'clock or like 8 o'clock, they then will give out again at like 10 o'clock or 11 o'clock, and then again at like 3 o'clock or 4 o'clock, so that everybody's getting roughly about the same information, whenever they watched it during the day. Like they don't expect somebody to be on the news and like keep watching it the entire time. Like the 24-hour news cycle is like good for somebody that just wants to keep up on the basics of what's going on,
hmm.
and like what's going on maybe a little bit locally, or and maybe like you learn about some topics that station is biased to, but you're never going to get like a huge in-depth look over something unless again it's like oh, is it like 40 minutes or something, or 20 minutes with, or one of those specials that they do.
Yeah, like for instance, 60 Minutes gets
60
about
minutes.
60
Yeah,
minutes.
that's right. I got one of those right.
Yeah, like some of the shows get longer to talk about one topic,
Mm-hmm.
and usually those cover pieces are relatively good and well researched and well thought out.
Mm-hmm.
I guess I just have a hard time seeing the benefit and the use of these 1 2 minute stories that never
Mm-hmm.
talk about anything whatsoever.
At least anything that you would see as like merit.
Yeah, exactly. Like I can get if it's like a public service announcement, like oh, there's
Mm-hmm.
there's a person loose in your area. We have no more facts. Stay tuned. That kind
Mm-hmm.
of thing. But for the most part, it's like for the most part, it's oh, there was a house fire today.
Mm-hmm.
The firemen came and put it out. One person was injured. No deaths. More
Mm-hmm.
more 11. It's like it sounds like there's so much there. Like why did
Yeah, or like there would be a lot more on that story tomorrow.
Yeah, and honestly, we never see it. Like most of the time, that
Yeah.
house fire is like, oh, that's old news. We got new news. We've got new stuff. Throw out
Mm-hmm.
the old stuff. Why do we need that?
Pretty much.
But
But you know what? I feel like it does help develop like a sense of community. You know what I mean? Like you definitely feel like you're from this area just because of the news station you listen to, right? I'm talking about local news at this point.
yeah,
that it just kind of gets you a more of a sense like you're from the greater Philadelphia area kind of deal. Like you hear about stories that are like science fairs and like little stuff like that. It allows you to feel like that you are a part of a greater community, right?
I could see that, but the problem I have is that it never feels like it's that specifically local. I really,
I mean, yeah, you're right.
I
You're right.
really do. I'm really not advocating here for like a news network strictly to my area, my city, but
Hmm.
but more or less, when I look at it, I want to be like, well, I don't know what's really going on around me. I know what's going on in the busier areas of South Jersey, but
Hmm.
in my area, no, not really.
I mean, I feel like local news stations are a great thing, and they definitely should cater to their areas. But I don't really know like a good solution to what this is. Like, I mean, what would they cover instead? I guess is like a good thing to say. I mean, you can't always keep it like on these hot button topics all the time because people are just going to get burned out on it.
Mm.
You know what I mean? Because like if you're going to watch the news every day, you're not going to want to talk about abortion rights, or you're not going to want to talk about certain stances of politicians. Like you don't want to hear that every day.
Mm.
I mean, some people do, but not everybody does.
No,
Some people just want to hear like, "Hey, what's going on in my area?" Oh, that's kind of nice. There's some kids, making arts and crafts things or something like that. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, and
it's just what people are willing to listen to. And a lot of the times, it's just not that deep.
I get that. I do. I get that it can't always be these long, extensive stories about everything.
Hmm.
But most of the time, it feels like things are getting skimmed over. That's
I
the
mean,
thing.
yeah.
It's the feel of it. Like back to comedy news networks, it feels like they're going over a topic. In generally, it's completeness.
Yeah.
Obviously,
But you know what?
time constrained there, but like it feels generally more complete than something like on the local news.
You're right. But they also have an entire week between each screening. I feel like that's a huge difference as well.
That's true.
Like especially like when they would do like 60 minutes or something like that, or like they would do like World News Tonight, right?
Hmm.
Kind of deal. Like it would just be that one half-hour segment for like World News Tonight, or like it would be like once a week specials, or something like that. For those things, you just need more time for it. Like you just can't fill that in with like the regular 24-hour news cycle. You don't necessarily have the time, I guess, to do things as correct.
That's correct.
Yeah, good verbiage there.
I get what you're saying. It's just
Frustrating?
yeah, a little bit. It's a little bit frustrating because it feels like we don't have the variety that you're speaking of entirely. It feels
Hmm.
like that's the ideal, but we're not there. It feels like we either have stories about extremely local stuff as in like, oh, local college is raising awareness about this and they're having a
Or
charity
it's
drive, or it's Syria has been invaded. It's like, "Oh, all right." I
yeah. By the way, Syria has not been invaded. I mean, by U.S. Because just I want to specify that because I don't want people to freak out.
No, 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 it hasn't happened. We're not breaking any news here. We're not a news network.
We are not a news network, but I like to think that we give some people news.
Yeah, the news on For Honor.
Exactly.
We 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 give the news on the important things. And
Yep.
we do our due
I think
research.
basically whatever we feel like can fill in a blank space, that's what we do. Like good children.
What?
That's all.
What?
That's the show.
What?
Yep.
Okay, bye.